Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the Unpacked virtual conference. Hello to Unpacked Chairman Douglas Gautier and Unpacked Exco members. I would also like to say a warm hello to Benson Phua, former Unpacked Chairman and the Unpacked Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Yesterday, we had a full day. Many conference delegates shared with me that they found CEO of Hong Kong Arts Festival, Tisa Ho's keynote speech to be very inspiring, as well as her conversation thereafter with APEC chairman. I would also like to say thank you to Kristen Eckhart from Athlete Festival Center and the panel speakers for their very grounded sharing and advice on digital marketing. We also heard about 8 very innovative projects that are looking for opportunities for presentation and collaboration. You can connect with the speakers on this conference platform, or you can download the information sheet for their contact details. If you had missed any of yesterday's sessions, don't worry, they are available as watch-on-demand video on this conference platform until Sunday morning. Now it gives me great pleasure to welcome the moderator for this panel session, Yvonne Tham. She's the CEO of Esplanade Theatres on the Bay in Singapore. Before joining Esplanade, Yvonne held several key roles in the public sector. Notably, she was the Deputy CEO of National Arts Council, where she oversaw the council's work in policy making, strategic planning, and capability development. For those of you who know her, she may be small in person, but she is hugely passionate about the arts. And in the many years that I've known her, she has always given me fresh perspectives to think about and also more work to do after just about every conversation with her. So I'm sure it would be a very interesting discussion. Over to you, please, Yvonne. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. That sounds like an invitation for more work, Rochelle, but we'll talk later. Welcome and good morning, everyone. I think it's morning in most countries where we are in Asia Pacific, and probably lunchtime down south in Australia, New Zealand. So I hope everyone's kind of well fed and energized. You know, Rochelle talked about yesterday's conversations, and yesterday, I think what really struck me was that how close yesterday's conversation by Tisa as well as the panelists would appear to this morning's with this morning's panel discussions as well. It feels as if when we speak of the digital, between programming, marketing, artistic creation, there's so much integration, and there's it's hard to draw the lines. And you know, when we embark on a new project, it really requires the brain to work. The brains from programming, the brains from marketing, particularly with digital, the brains from technical production, and the brains from our IT departments. And we all know that when things get integrated and when, you know, things get a bit messy and lines get a bit blurred, you know you're onto something good. You're only onto something good when walls and boundaries start collapsing a little. So on that note, you know, even though we're in very different countries, our boundaries have collapsed a little, and I'm really happy that we have 3 people from 3 different countries and then with 3 different setups, 3 different types of organizations on the panel today. Lydia Kuo, who's Exec Director of the Taiwan Philharmonic. So we'll hear from an orchestra and a fairly large arts company in a way. We'll also hear from Stuart Buchanan, who's Head of Digital Programming at Sydney Opera House. Large performing arts center, very well established, multi-genre. And we'll also hear from Paul Tham, who's the Exec Director at West Kowloon Cultural District, still evolving in a way arts precinct. I think more than an art center, an entire precinct. Paul looks after, of course, oversees the performing arts aspect of this cultural district. So we're going to hear from 3 very kind of distinguished people, as well as people with, you know, at different stages in a way of their organization's relationship and approach to digital programming. So on that note, we're going to kick off first with Lydia, giving us the perspective from an orchestra and an arts company's point of view in Taiwan. Lydia, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to have this session sharing with you. So we are from Taiwan Philharmonic, as well as at home we are called NSO in Taiwan. So I would love to share a story from since this late 2019 until now, what's our story to know that about our development of a digital aspect. From March 2020 is the first COVID outbreak in Taiwan. So I think it's the same story all over the world. So as the Financial Times mentioned, that we didn't know when will we start our music again. But in Taiwan, we're lucky that's only 3 months outbreak. So audience and performers came back very soon. But it's difficult to in the meantime to develop our digital strategy. So during the outbreak, we did some first small scale chamber music recording and to explore what could be for the digital performance, what's the concepts of programming and production. So we did 12 different formats of chamber music group with our internal group, internal teams, and also 2 international virtual chamber music. So it looks like good. There's so many views, but it's not very, for us, we are not really satisfied in only the chamber music. So when we all come back in May last year, we collaborate with our public television service. And it's difficult for orchestra that we are performing group. So how can we combine with live streaming? We didn't have such a facility, equipment, and also the knowledge for doing the performing and also the live streaming skills. So it's really important to have such a partnership. So we did 3 programs. The first concert will be free for physical concert because we would love to encourage people come back to the concert hall again, not to feel afraid of being with people in the concert hall. And then in the meantime, we did the virtual one, is the live streaming. So I think in Taiwan, there's so many places that's not easy to get into a concert hall, like not in Taipei, and the transportation across cities are not so friendly. So I think it's good that the 3 program and we have 49,000 views. And then not only live concert, we don't think of what's our production, what could we do more. So luckily we have a Ray Chen violinist who came to Taiwan last year. So we had a national concert hall to have a live stream masterclass with 4 students. So it's also a very important collaboration between the Taiwan Philharmonic and public television service. So since many of the international music fans were struggling different measures of lockdown, so then we have such a successful live streaming masterclass. And then there are so many audience, they are ticket holder for the live concert, and we allow them to have a free ticket to a mass class, and also have 4 young Taiwanese violinists. So it's quite encourage people, and we are so impressed that there are so many people, like 100,000 views on Facebook violin channels and PTS channel. And also we did a documentary to talk about more about this master class and what we gain from those experience. In the meantime, we started the physical concert. So after I think the second half of last year, we started back to the normal in Taiwan, but we think maybe we can do something more. So we wanted to further integrate technology into classical music. We started developing our own app, so we will introduce more later. And then, unfortunately, this year, there was a second COVID outbreak. And then we started thinking of what's the strategy, what's the picture of the audience, and what's the future of the music lovers. So we are thinking of a relationship between free concerts or free physical concert or ticket concert. Is it possible to have a live streaming but ticket concerts? And is there any possibility for recording virtual concerts but the audience have to pay for it. So it's a kind of, we try to know more about the future. So it's what we did for the past 3 years, past 3 months. So the first concert for invite audience come back to the concert hall is Maestro Lu. This concert is a live streaming concert and also ticket physical concert. So it's good that more than 90% attendance, and also the views is quite a lot. And then we started online concert, but it's a ticketed. And then we have a collaboration not only with PTS, it's our own production. So we combine with the OpenTix Live. It's a platform for people could buy tickets and enjoy the digital concert. So it's the first time we did it in Taiwan. And we did 4 chamber music concerts, and not only concerts, included pre-concert talks. And also we held a live chat with a app line with the performers. So it's a kind of interactive, and to promote more and more music to people they didn't have experience to attend a live concert. And also had 2 orchestra concerts. So we sold 1.4 thousand tickets and also have a lot of viewers. And then to come back, that not only the live production, we are thinking of what's the future for the music lovers, for the audience. So in a spirit of adventure, we launched a music lab with a purpose to exploring the unknown and discovering new possibility for the orchestra music. So this music lab came up with a plan of incorporate with technology and music care and music therapy, applying the voice current issues like cultural equality and inclusion. So we look forward to use this as a method to include more and more people who can enjoy the music. So it's our app now, it's just launched. So we have 2 aspects. One is a population agent. So for those people that we encourage in communication between people with dementia and their carers. And also for the public is a cultural equality, creating the classical music of our generation, because we are getting older and older. So in the future, we'll be the older people, and making music here available at people's fingertips. So it's easy with our fingers, we can enjoy the music. And so it's called Music Lab Design, integrating technology into classical music, partnering with hospitals and educational institutions. So our target audience, it will be general audience. General audience can enjoy our world-class musical content right at our app. And also people living with dementia and their carers, and creating better communication between those 2. And then it's easier for their well-being and diary feature. So we have different functions of our 5 main features. The first one is discover. We can read and have the latest classical musical news and articles. And for our music, stream Taiwan, our good music recording of our live concerts. And very interesting is the podcast one. We invited so many musicians to share and talk their life, their music. So we are developing, the new thing is for more people who they are difficult to read the words. So maybe they are old or they couldn't understand. So we have a more discover audible. And also we have lots of downloads. And for the well-being, we try to create a format that listen to 12 professionally curate playlists. And these playlists that could have an overall state of mind by using this function. And for the diary, it's especially created for the dementia people. And so they will be able to record their live events by selecting moods, taking photos, videos, making voice memos, and also jotting down their thoughts. So I will have to very short conclusion of what we discovered of our digital productions. I think for the COVID-19, the lives had been changed. Everyone would agree with these comments. But for the picture of the whole audience, we understand that the digital concerts or digital function, they are not replacement of the live concerts. So, but we have to move to the other page because of the COVID-19. So I think in the future, we still have to rethinking of strategy. How can we do the balance between the physical events and the virtual events, and how to build up more and more music lovers in our industry. So it's my presentation, and also please join our Music Lab official app, and please let us know your comments. And I think it's not only for National Symphony Orchestra in Taiwan, but also for the future for ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. I mean, that was, really inspiring in many ways. And that reminded me that, Lydia didn't come upon leading the Philharmonic out of nowhere with these fantastic ideas. She was previously also leading the Taiwan Symphony, as well as Taishan's Cultural Arts and Cultural Foundation. So, I think those years of experience built up to this date, but also really moved by the social focus of being focused on folks with dementia and their caregivers. And that's something that I think for many of us in programming and the arts, we're most sensitive to that in a time like this, where COVID has shown that the most vulnerable in our society are the ones who suffer the most, right? The ones who are most lonely, most isolated. So, really well done to the Philharmonic for coming up with an app. And I've got loads of questions, and I'm sure the audience listening to this will have. So please, can I just invite also the rest of you to type in your questions, and then the secretary will actually be posting those questions to the speakers simultaneously. So, if you have any thoughts in the meantime, just type them in the chat, yeah, and we will be able to see them. And the other person I thought to introduce, saying he's got tons of experience too. He's not popped out of nowhere to suddenly head up digital programming at Sydney Opera House. I'm just reading his CV. He's like, curator, worked in museums, worked in biennales, worked in festivals around the world, broadcaster, producer, radio personality. Okay, so he's done it all, and in some ways very, very apt that he's heading up digital programming at the Sydney Opera House. So Stuart Buchanan, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind introduction as well. I'm just going to talk for 10 minutes about some of the work that we've been doing at Sydney Opera House over the last 2 years in relation to digital programming. I want to talk a little bit about the closure last year and the digital program that we ran, which was called From Our House to Yours. And that was followed with the launch of our streaming platform called Stream. I'll talk a little bit about that, and also just briefly touch on some new survey data that we have around our reopening. The house has just come out of a second period of lockdown. So we were locked down for 8 months last year in 2020. In 2021, we went back into lockdown at the end of June and only just came out. So we had our first performance at the Opera House last night. So it's been quite the roller coaster ride. I would just want to start by talking about last year's COVID response. So we were closed for, as I say, quite a long period during 2020. And the timing of my appointment at the house was very fortuitous. I think I started 4 or 5 months before this lockdown, and so I had been developing a digital programming strategy for the house, which was completed a week or two before the lockdown. So we had essentially quite a few ideas. We had a sort of roadmap for what digital programming might look like, and then lockdown hit immediately. So I had expected to have a fairly leisurely amount of time to start the program, but we went much faster than I had expected. We launched the program with a variety of different approaches. On reflection, what was great about running such a long program was that we got to test all these different approaches to work out what was good for audiences and also what was good for us, both in terms of engagement, in terms of views, but also artistically. Digital programming has been around for a long time, but I think now through the pandemic has increased in visibility and increased in quantity of presentation. So there's a lot more discussion to be had about what is digital programming, what constitutes digital programming, what can we do. So we tried out these things that you can see on screen, live streamed events across 30 weeks. We went into the Opera House archive and pulled out a lot of archival recordings to work out whether people were interested in that type of material. We also produced a number of what we might call digital first works, so not live streams, not performances, but performance works for screen. And also looked at this concept of a scheduled program, so mimicking a standard, art center schedule by having digital events at specific days and times throughout the week. So that was the approach that we took. The response, I guess, was multifaceted. These are the main things I think that we took away from it. That it gave us an opportunity to work with more local artists than we ever had before, primarily due to restriction of movement. But it showed us that there was an audience appetite for more local content, and by local content I mean Sydney content or in our state of New South Wales. Accessibility was obviously increased. We had 130 hours of free programming across the period. Some interesting results around our audience. So the average age of the digital audience was 39 compared to the average age of the Opera House audience of 48, so about 10 years younger than our average audience. And about 1/4 of the audience had not attended the Opera House in the previous 12 months, or indeed at all. So newish audience and younger audience there. Obviously, we accelerated very quickly into digital programming. 5 million video views across YouTube and social media across the season. And interestingly, when surveyed, the highest response from the audience was that well-being and mental health were some of the key reasons for them tuning in and engaging with the program. That then led us to develop Stream, which is our streaming platform, which launched in April of this year. And when I say streaming platform, it is very similar to what you may know as Netflix or other types of streaming platforms with a large library or inventory of work. On Stream, it is a mix of ticketed events, or what we might call paid on-demand events, and also free screenings as well. The learning, I think, from the first digital season was that the audience, whilst they were interested in recordings and live streams, that there was an appetite for what we called here original digital programming. So that's creating work specifically for screen, but also work that is more broadly termed digital performance. So artists that are working with digital as a medium, as opposed to simply filming their performance as it would appear on stage. And I think that nuance or that inflection is really important. That has been the main shift over the last 12 months, to consider digital programming as a unique art form in and of itself, or certainly a unique programming space that is not simply a question of capturing an archival recording of an artist appearing on stage. With the streaming platform, it also gave us the opportunity to license existing digital works from Australia and around the world. It gave us the opportunity to work with people like the Royal Shakespeare Company, the Korean National Contemporary Dance Company, Matthew Bourne's New Adventures, simply licensing work that already existed, but presenting it in the context of our streaming platform to work side by side with the things that we were presenting. So there's often a sense that by creating a platform such as this, you will need to produce a lot of content, and certainly there needs to be a facility within or capacity within the organization to do that. But we were able to add to that through this process of licensing existing works. Recordings and live streams are also still very important. Importantly here, they're no longer, in the main, they're no longer free. With the platform we use, which is the Vimeo OTT platform, we have the capacity to charge essentially a ticket price for the live streams, and that has been that's been successful. And we're also now looking at how do we now move beyond the simple one-way streaming paradigm or framework into presentations that are offer more interactivity and more engagement with the audience. Very quickly, there's some numbers on stream. We have about 200 performances, films or videos on the platform. There's been around 30 live streamed performances or sessions since launch, and we've sold around 10,000 session tickets. We had about 12,000 customers who signed up to the free offer. The live stream sales are very much stronger than what we might call premium on demand, and by that I mean taking an existing work and trying to sell a ticket to that, sort of in the same way if you might rent a film online. So there's definitely a preference for the liveness of the shared experience. We're looking forward to introducing apps into the mix very soon, within the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure that will change the experience for a lot of people. Currently it's through desktop and mobile web. The biggest challenge, of course, remains licensing and contracting as the industry adapts to these hybrid presentation contracts that might encompass either both live performance and recording agreements or are simply digital-only agreements. A lot of these are, for all of us, are quite new, and there isn't necessarily a consistent benchmark from contract to contract. I'm sure that will resolve in time, but right now it's incredibly varied in its approach. Finally, I just wanted to give you some very recent results from a customer survey. As I mentioned, we reopened last night. Around 95% of people feel very confident that the vaccine effort in Australia will mean that their level of activity, the level of engagement with the arts will return to normal. About 30% were interested in still streaming performances online, which is very encouraging. In a separate study with the Australian group Pattern Makers, over half of audiences do see a future for digital participation, and about 10% really see themselves as absolutely committed, or the digital devotees who see a very substantial role for digital. And about another 40 are a little bit more selective. So all of those are very encouraging. People are interested in returning to the venue, but are interested in still viewing works online as well. And that's all for me just now.
Thank you, Stuart. Sorry, plane passing by, so you may hear something. Okay. Thanks, Stuart. I think, what Sydney Opera House has done, based on your large archive, but also thinking about the future, taking adventures or experiments with different formats, that's a very familiar story with many of us as well, because there is no one answer. And that's right. Just listening to that diversity, the range of digital kind of programs and initiatives you put forward, it's inspiring. It's also very reassuring for many of us in this field. And so in that sense, on to Paul, who has very new venues and still building even newer ones. But Paul is no stranger to the arts. He's always been, amongst arts administrators championing the arts administration as a capability or as a profession, but he has also in the past led the Hong Kong Ballet and the Philharmonic as well. So some of us may already know him from that past. But now with West Kowloon, I think, new challenges, multiple venues, and a massive audience to build. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Can you see my screen? Somehow my screen turned black.
I think it's dark as well, but yeah, now it's fine.
Oh, let's see. Sorry. Okay, so start right from the beginning. And hello, everyone. From Hong Kong, I'm Paul Tham, Executive Director, Performing Arts of the West Kowloon Cultural District. And so listening to Stuart, his experience at Sydney Opera House, and I can share a lot of the sentiments and a lot of the challenges I faced since I joined the district last March. And so I became the executive director of West Kowloon at the outskirt, or start of the pandemic last year. And so basically last year in Hong Kong, most of the theaters and concert halls are closed and reopened, I think at least 3 to 4 times. And so we didn't actually have a lot of theater times last year. So maybe at most 2 months of performances and programming. And so to go back to Art Tech in Hong Kong, I thought since Lydia talked about Taiwan and Stuart about Australia, so maybe for our peers, international peers, I talk a little bit about the situation in Hong Kong, Art Tech and COVID. And so in terms of digital technology, even though Hong Kong, it's a very digitally adept society. As you may know, every person in the city owns, on average, 2 phones, cell phones, and spend hours a day online. And yet, when it comes to the embrace of technology, digital technology for arts and culture, we're a little bit of a late adopter or adapter. And so everything changed last November when the chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, highlighted in her policy address the importance of arts and technology. And that threw everyone into a tailspin trying to catch up on this phenomenon. And so obviously West Kowloon Cultural District is a key part of that discussion and strategic direction. And before I go into my portfolio, which is performing arts, at West Kowloon Cultural District, we have 2 major museums, and I want to talk a little bit about the whole digital capacity of the district. And so M+, which is due to open in 2 weeks' time, 12th of November, to the general public after years and years of construction designs and public expectations, anticipations. And so one of the 4 pillars of M+ is actually moving image, and has a very, very important focus, curatorial focus on digital programs. And so as you can see, the whole facade of the museum is a giant LED mon. And so they're doing countdown now every day, 30, 29, 14, whatever. And also they display the digital programs on that big, huge LED monitor. And so the other museum, the Hong Kong Palace Museum, dedicates entire gallery to new media and digital art. And so evidently, West Kowloon Cultural District emphasizes very deeply on digital technology. And so onto my portfolio. Right now, I have 2 performing arts venues, CG Center and Free Space, both landmark venues for performances, creation, learning, and enjoyment. And the 2 facilities are built for the present and future needs of artists and audiences. And so they both incorporate the latest technology. So artistically, evidently, our curation of in-house and partnership programs capitalizes on the availability of the technology and in-house talents. And on the customer experience level, the district invests also heavily in building a data warehouse, as well as placemaking and wayfinding technologies. As you can see in the photos below, our AR apps actually was launched in September. So it's just 1 month old. And so if you're online, please download from your stores. And so a little bit about the pandemic situation in Hong Kong. As I said earlier, last year we experienced quite a number of lockdowns due to the pandemic. And so not a lot of times were spent really having the theaters opened. And so one of the universities in Hong Kong, the Education University of Hong Kong, actually came out with the surveys, and of which West Kowloon Cultural District Performing Arts was part of. And it's called the Performing Arts and Pandemic, a study of consumption's attitude of performing arts audiences and in the Greater Bay Area and in the post-pandemic era. And the reason why I showed this was, as we talk about digital strategy, one thing that we need to dig deeper is to understand the consumers' behaviors, how they actually see online presentation and live presentations during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And so I actually incorporate quite a number of slides. Maybe I'll speed through, conscious of our time limits. And so during the pandemic, we can actually see two interesting phenomenon. One is that both Sichu and the classical music art forms both experience quite a huge drop in terms of live audiences back in 2019 and then 2020, when most of the arts consumptions happen online. And so as you can see, Sichu is down by 56% and classical music concerts by 35%. I think one of the reasons, according to the surveys anyway, is that it could be due to the acoustic and the audio systems. So evidently online, the sound quality may not be as good as on site. And so there are the reasons for watching online performances and the reason for not watching online performances. And I think they both adhere quite similarly to live performances. For watching online, like live performance, you see what you want to see, and not watching because of the contents and the programs. And the frequency in 2019 and 2020, so there's an uptick, obviously, on online consumptions of performances during the pandemic because there was no theater in 2020. And so this is about ticket price. And so there's quite an interesting findings, and that people for live performances, they actually willing to pay more in numbers for medium to low price tickets. And for high price tickets, there's a slight drop. So there's a price sensitivity in terms of live performance due to the pandemic. And I'm going to quickly skip through because time is running out. And I'll just go right into reopening because that's quite salient to our discussion. And so the findings show that a lot of people in Hong Kong, that might be due to the fact that the survey was done last November. And so the results weren't final. And that a lot of the audiences, they did not buy any tickets of future live performances, even though the theaters are slowly reopening. And so that should be different because in 2021, this year, like when all the theaters reopened since March, the audienceship has been more than robust. And so I'm going to go into the next slide. And the attitudes toward attending live performances after the reopening of venues. And so people still want to see live performances after the reopening. And so I think that's quite understandable. And I'm going to skip right through to This is the setting of watching. People watch at night. I think that's quite expected, and a lot of people concentration. A lot of people actually multitask when they watch online performances. And so I think, like, it comes to the conclusion of the findings. And I think there's some really interesting takings that we can actually use for our digital strategies. And one is the changes in audience behavior. And so we saw the increase in online consumptions last year, and that will actually continue in the coming months and years, even though the theaters have been reopened. And the audience are willing to pay for online programs more. And the attitude of the audiences, there's 6 points, and they have the intention to continue watching online after pandemic. And on-site live experience cannot be replaced. And they recognize the values of online programs, the low opportunity cost and the close-ups, and versus live consumption of the performances. And so the fourth point is the reasonable pricing of online programs. And the fifth one is very encouraging. Last year, when we surveyed the audiences, a lot of times people consume the performances or workshops or talks online was that they want to show their support of local artists and programs. And so finally, that's quite key for Performing Arts Center, is that we need to up our game in terms of health and hygiene measures, so to give a safe environment for audiences to come back into our theaters. So enough about the findings. And so just to show our participants a little bit about West County Cultural District Performing Arts digital programs, past, present, and future. And so I have prepared some videos, and so I thought, like, that might be able to jazz up the morning session a little bit more. So I'll talk less and show you some of the clippings from some of our past performances. And so last year, when the theaters were closed, so it was quite a challenging situation for the local artists and arts organizations and theaters like ourselves. And so one project that we actually presented with Edward Lam Dance Theater was a project called An Invitation on Empty Theater. It came out in July 2020. So it was the central question for this project is during the pandemic, when it's a response to the pandemic and impact on the performance. And so we gathered 30 local actors and engage in an online film projects to explore how does it feel to perform in an empty theater. And so we had actors like Kieran Pang, Sean Kieran of Theatre Le Pive, and Candice Yu, people like those to talk, and you can see in the photos. And I'm going to show you a little bit of the videos. And so please.
各位觀眾，現在休息片刻，演出即將開始。
各位觀眾，現在休息片刻，演出即將開始。
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a short break. The performance is about to continue.
So that was an immensely popular program, and we put it online, and we had tens of thousands of views for this particular project. And one of our idea last year, because the theaters were closed, and so one reason for our digital programming is to maintain the awareness between West Kowloon and the audiences. And so all this online program has that particular remit. And so the other thing we did last year, and so it happened at our annual Free Space Jazz Festival, and it happened in November 2020. And so one thing we did was that we had a performance called Imaginarium. It was a co-presentation with the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. And so it embodied, we have the live band on stage, and also the TEA, the Technical and Entertainment Arts students, working together with our technicians to put the whole thing together. It's a happy marriage of live arts with stage digital technologies. And so we employ tracking systems, immersive sound systems, projections, and automated rigging system for that particular show. And so maybe I'll play a little bit about the Jazz Festival for our participants. The video, please. So that was our jazz festival from last year, and our 2021 edition started last night, and we have another Imaginarium this coming Sunday. And so for all those of you actually happen to be in Hong Kong, come see that particular performance Sunday evening. And so for those of you who can't, maybe we'll have an online version in the future. And so the next thing I want to talk about is actually just happened. Our live streaming productions of the Japanese choreographer Umeda, Indivisible Substance. And this is quite an interesting collaboration, cross-year collaboration with the Japanese master. And it's a multidisciplinary and avant-garde projects. And it's a follow-up to Without Umeda back in 2020. And it's in response to the cancellations of the in-person performances. And this work continues his exploration of new possibilities for audience-artist interaction in a post-COVID world. And so we had our live stream version, ticketed live stream version back in September. And so 1 month later, we put it online for delayed broadcast, also ticketed required. And so maybe I'll play a little bit of the video as well, please. So that was Umeda. So I want to bring us back to January earlier this year. And so this is a collaboration with a local theater company, On and On, and it's called Waking Dreams in 1984. It was designed originally to be a live performance. However, as to be staged in December 2020, but because of the theater lockdown, so the whole thing needed to go actually online instead of live. And so what happened, and that was actually the first time that we tried that format and realized how the difference between a live performance, you can't just live stream a live performance. There's a lot of technical and artistic directions you have to adapt to make it interesting for the online audiences. And so we actually spend a lot more time on reimagining the productions online versus live. And so it's quite a time-consuming project, but the results was fantastic. And so it was live streamed back in January 2021. Supposedly, the live performances were three shows in the theater, 450 seats per show. And so so at most about 1,000 seats sold. But for the live stream productions, live stream productions, we actually managed to exceed our supposedly live audience numbers. So that went to show that if it's a wonderful productions, people willing to pay, and there's a lot more business opportunity potential for a good online production like Waking Dreams. There's no video, and so we're going to go right into the final project I want to share. And when we talk about art tech, digital strategy, we talk about artists, we talk about audiences, but I think one very important segment is actually technician. The technician manning the equipment, manning the machines. And so one thing the West Kowloon Culture District has done and quite emphasized on is how to nurture a future talent. And so we have a cross-year partnership with the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts in a project called Tech Box. And so it just started just this year. And so that's going to consummate in the year of 2024. And so basically it was a project that actually married professional artists as mentors to utilize digital technologies for the students at APA, using West Kowloon Culture District's latest technologies as the backdrop. And so in 23-24, we're going to have the consummation of the labor of love, and in the terms of a festival. So that's going to be live performance in those 2 years, and I welcome all of you when the travel ban, the limitation restrictions are lifted to come to Hong Kong to experience those performances. And so finally, to wrap up, I just want to talk about future art tech projects for West Kowloon. And so for Situ Center, we're going to have the virtual backstage experience. And we spoke earlier about the Tech Box collaboration with APA, and also the Jazz Festival 2021. We're going to have a real-time music jam with artists outside of Hong Kong, namely from Brussels. That's going to happen on Sunday night, 8 o'clock at that Imaginaire, the Music Lab project. And so we're going to have the Free Space AR venue tour experience app. And next year, 2022, UMAID is going to come back with the Chinese artist, choreographer Lu Yang in other art tech performances. And so that wraps up my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. We're now into the Q&A section. I'm looking at the clock, and we have about 35 minutes and loads of questions that people have typed. What I'm going to do is that I have grouped some of your questions together So I may not call out your name or read your question as it is, just so that we can cover everything. I think the first set of questions that I read from what people have typed have to do with capabilities, be they kind of human capabilities within the organization or physical infrastructural capabilities. I know Sydney Opera House was closed some years ago for a major revamp of your venue, so you must be pretty souped up by now. And Paul's venues are kind of built in today's digital age. Some of us are living in, you know, analog venues that have been kind of adjusting over the years. So we were all at different stages of being kind of having the infrastructure to support our work. And I hear also from Lydia that she had to partner PTS, Taiwan's PTS, to do some of these broadcasts. And related to that, it's also a platform question, whether Sydney Opera House's stream platform was white labeled, or do you build it from scratch? So a general question, if the three speakers could share with us your experience in terms of both the human capabilities that you've had to build up in your organization to do this kind of work, but also the infrastructural capabilities, the streaming capabilities, or any other kind of technical capabilities, as well as the platform capabilities. Perhaps we will start with in the same order with Lydia and Stuart and Paul.
Okay, it's really a good question. Since in the first beginning, it's difficult to us to have such equipment and facility. So it's the reason that we collaborate with PTS last year. But this year we have our own team and also build up the platform of the ticket system. So I think the structure in Taiwan is there's a National Performing Arts Center, and under this umbrella, there's a National Concert Hall and Theater in Taipei, Kaohsiung Wellwing Cultural Center, and the Taichung Theater NTT and National Symphony Orchestra. So we have our own ticketing system. So in the past 1 year, that we are developing how can we buy online concert tickets. So it takes time for develop those possibility, and then now I think we're still in the process of developing. But as you input more, and then you can see that also the audience supported so much. So I think it's good that two aspects from the audience, from future audience, from the public, and also from the presenters, and also organization like Symphony Orchestra, that we all do together for the future.
Stuart?
Yes, thank you. I'll answer the first question on the second question on whether the platform was white label. Yes, so it's the Vimeo OTT platform. There's various different options within that enterprise offer, and you know, we chose options that had higher degree of customer support, both in terms of account management from Vimeo and also direct customer support from Vimeo to our customers. So the platform works very well for us, and we're happy with it thus far. In terms of capability, it's a very interesting question, because the Opera House, you're right in saying that we've been doing this for a while and are well resourced. However, the last period of major investment was probably about 10 years ago. So actually the infrastructure that's there in terms of the hardware and also the skill set of the crew working on site, it's actually using a facility or infrastructure that's quite out of date. And what we actually found as we got to the end of the first lockdown and that very long period of activity, was that a lot of that equipment had actually come to the end of its life. And so we're actually now in a period of reinvestment and having to rebuild a lot of that infrastructure. So it may appear that we were, you know, well resourced and set up for it, but actually a lot of it was very touch and go, as they say. What we have done in the interim is, and this might also answer an upcoming question as well, is actually worked extensively in a little bit of a collaborative model where we've used our crew and use the skills that we have, but actually augmenting that with sort of external equipment that might be hired in, or other crews that might come in and join together with ours to create this sort of hybrid crew, some of our team, some of their team. The benefit of that model is that our team learn from that external sort of supplier group. So that kind of hybrid model is actually where we are today, right now, and we're recording a whole series of works this week. And that hybrid model is working well, but obviously we aim to improve all the internal infrastructure as we go. So, there's a lot there, I think, hopefully to unpack in terms of working with external suppliers, filmmakers and crew versus internal resources, and finding the balance between those two.
Paul?
Sorry.
Paul, will you have something to add in terms of, the kind of both infrastructural capabilities for the venues, or human capabilities, or even in this case, Jennifer from Auckland Live had asked a question about ticketing capabilities for some of your digital programs.
So it has been a trial. I have to be totally honest. It's been a trial and error because, as you understand, West Kowloon PA Performing Arts, it's a new kid on the block, and so the whole COVID-19 and the whole situation actually caught us by a little bit by surprise. And so we tried really hard to play catch up last year, and so when we try to move our live performance model to online, we experienced a lot of difficulties in terms of the manpower requirements. As we all know, it takes more people to put a performance online than the live shows, because you apart from the production, you have to actually be able to handle the streaming technologies and digital digital technology. And so fortunately, we have our teams are quite digitally adept, and so they understand, they know how to do it. But we still have to ramp up our capacity to be able to do more, to move more programs online. And so in terms of financial, it's also quite expensive in our experience to actually put shows online. And a lot of times last year, because we had our programming budget assigned, and so we tried to use some of that programming budget to for live performances originally for online. But this year, when we actually have both, more of our efforts actually put on live performances, that means, like, we just have not the same kind of financial capacity to actually manage both. And so it's almost like, you have to choose between two children. And do you do more live, or you do more online, on site? And obviously, it's like, for a PAC like us, we want to entertain our live audiences more. And so if we have to choose, we want to focus more on live audiences. And so when we're in the process of doing our budgeting for next year, and so this is a very interesting and also quite a challenging internal discussion for myself and my teams. And in terms of ticketing capacity, we use various forms. In Hong Kong, apart from ERPTIX, LCSD, the government venues, they use ERPTIX. And so for West Kowloon, we use SysTick. I think the Singapore peers actually know that system very well. And so there are also a mushrooming of independent ticketing platforms out there, Pop Ticket, Ticket Flaps, and whatnot. And so for Umeda, we use Pop Tickets. And so they can do the ticketing as well as the performances together. I think that's a very convenient. And so we explore, even though at West Cal we use SysTick, we still explore different ticketing platforms that's more conducive to online performance and ticketing as a one go.
Thank you all. I think what I hear from everybody is that, they've given us very nice presentations, and we were all really impressed by the efforts, and I'm sure they are fantastic efforts. But the truth is, all of us are somewhat still learning and adapting new models, and particularly in a time and space like that, it's not being kind of married or vested to one, and actually staying quite open to how things may evolve. And that's what I'm hearing in terms of not just hybrid programming, but also hybrid crews. Just to share, the same experience is happening at Esplanade. We're rethinking our venues, but the truth is the future is going to change at a much faster pace than any of us can anticipate. So, how do you move nimbly? How do you make sure you have capabilities for today and still be able to add on, buy some, borrow some, rent some, invent some along the way? I don't think there is one template, and I think that's the reality as we hear from Sydney, Taiwan, and Hong Kong West Kowloon, even for very, very new venues. I hear that Paul is still experimenting with several ticketing platforms as we look at the diversity of digital presentations. That's also brought me to another set of questions. A lot of that has to do with the audience side of things. We've been hearing from you about all the work that's been done to kind of innovate. A question has come from Dalvin from Esplanade to ask how did Sydney increase subscription to stream over this period? How do you encourage further subscription? And I think the same question for Lydia. You've had 115,000, I read, downloads of your app, which is great, in a very short time. And for Paul as well, you've got a West Kowloon kind of more exploratory wayfinding type app. What are some of your strategies, both from a programming and marketing perspective, to increase subscription and stickiness of your digital activities?
Yeah. Okay, I think we should mention that as Yvonne mentioned, that we're still in the learning process because it's so new that everything happened that we didn't happen in the past. So for us, that's we should recognize to understand that the digital program is not replacement of the on-site activity. So you have to rethinking of your concept of programming, what's the production going on. So as our experience, if we just have some archive program to the public and no one understand or no one have an interest in those boring concept. So I think it's a new thing that for brainstorming process, you have to rethinking of the way you want to present the program to the public and what's their reaction, and you also learn from their reaction. And then when your production is good enough and it's easier to attract more and more followers. So as our apps, we do lots of group interviews to understand how can we do it deeper and in a very important way that you should focus on your audience and also have a balance with your artists, your musicians, and it could be have more and more followers for the platform, for the organization, or for the institutions. Yeah.
Thank you. And Stuart, if you unmute yourself, what are some of the strategies you've used to increase the subscription to stream?
Do you mind if I just respond to your previous comment briefly? Because I think it's a sort of key learning for us, and it also talks to, I think, some of the other questions. We talk about a change from, one mode of behavior to the current mode of behavior of what went before and what is now. And I think our reflection is that change is actually now the constant, that there is no such thing as a kind of new mode of digital programming. It will constantly change and iterate. Just when we think we know what it is, it will change again. And that's a result of so many people, bringing such great ideas into this space and the technology that surrounds it, that just when we think we've got it understood and just think when we've got it nailed, it will change again. So part of part of where we're working with at the Opera House is to, I guess, help to instill that sense of constant change within the organisation, that there is no one model, there's no one way of doing things, and even that hybrid model of crews, that will change next week or the week after, or what have you. So it's very hard at an institution at the size of the Opera House to foster a sort of agility, that kind of real belief in change and being open to change as a constant state of being. That's, institutions generally don't sit well with that. You know, a lot of us personally don't sit well with that, but institutions certainly don't sit well with that. So that is one of the key challenges, I think, not for the Opera House, but for the sector. That change will always be the prime state for this whole endeavour. On to the question around subscriptions. I guess the other key learning, which talks a little bit to that too, is trying to integrate everything that we're doing with extant marketing practices in some respects. So, Paul, you're sort of talking there a little bit about, you know, the live performance versus the digital performance, and we've had exactly the same conversation. And certainly in marketing, initially, is a sense of that they were different things. And of course, they are different things in practice, but from an audience's perspective, it's still something that's on at a time of day with a ticket price at a place, even though that's a URL rather than a physical location. So it's still an event, and it's still something you attend, and it's still something you pay for or register for. So to try and align all the way that we promote, the language we use, the discourse around digital programming, to align with regular in-venue event programming and make them as similar as possible. So that's from an audience's perspective, that they're being communicated about digital programming in the same way that they're communicated about regular programming. It's just another facet of they have a choice to come to the venue, or they have a choice to watch online, and it's not separate or different. It's all part of the same mix. So that was very, very hard to do, I have to say. That was very hard to instill that sense of similarity as opposed to difference. But once we started to get going, and that really helped in terms of helping the marketing team understand how to drive subscriptions, because it's simply another facet of what they do regularly, but they just have to think about it in a different way, even though the practice is the same. Finally, the other thing I'd say in terms of onboarding new subscribers is very much the strategy we took was about a mix of both paid content and free content, and so we have a free subscription, and I would say maybe 80% of the content on the streaming platform is free. And so therefore that is the that is the carrot that brings the audience in, and then when they're there and they've enjoyed that free content, they want to watch something else. Well, it's there at $5 or $10 or $15. So certainly the free subscription and the free content was key to the strategy, and yes, and then trying to make sure it was very embedded in the marketing language and marketing practice, as opposed to being seen as being othered in some way.
So I'll add to the two other speakers on this particular topic. And so as a new startup, we just don't have the inventory like Sydney Opera House or even our Taipei peer. And so we have very few archival programs right now. So one of our digital strategy is how to build up that inventory to a critical mass at some point in time, so we can actually put together a digital stage, a monetized digital stage, and everything actually pulled together, because that actually had a lot of impact on our membership program. Because as Stuart talked about, so the archival programming and could be monetized, could be membership only, and so that has it has a lot of antennas reaching out into every aspect of our operations and business strategy. And so until that happens, until we achieve, it's a catch-22. How do we actually increase our digital programs so we can actually reach that particular touch point? And so what we do now is we have all this digital program. And also another discussion is, what is digital programming and digital marketing? Because a lot of times it's murky. So the marketing people think, oh, this is a promotional tool, any digital programs. On the other hand, digital program is actually an art form in itself, as Stuart can attest to that. And so we need to actually re-educate or educate our own self first. So we have the digital programs, we have the digital content marketing. And so how do they actually work hand in hand? And so one thing we do, one strategy we have now is when we do digital programming, we actually put it's audio-visual driven. And so we put it on our social media to drive up our social media memberships. And so that's a very key. Facebook is textual, but we have Instagrams, we have WeChats, and so that, and YouTube's too. And so that is actually quite an important, if you will, promotional strategy to drum up our social media platforms. And so it goes hand in hand. So kind of tide us over until we actually achieve that critical mass. And so I think one of the questions I was asked was the live streaming with the artists. And so it's tough because to do live streaming between two countries, two continents, I think there's a lot of digital and technological issues that we have to overcome. And it's not as easy as just like the conferences we have today on Team. The requirements a lot higher in terms of the quality, the acoustic quality and the visual quality. A lot of times we actually have the bandwidth, we have the capacity, but our peers may not actually have that from the studios. So we have to actually, in terms of that, a case in point for the jazz festival that's happening this weekend, we have to, our partner in Brussels, we have to find the right facilities that actually has that digital capacity to stream without any latency or hiccups. So we can actually have a seamless exchange. And so what the point is, it's for the audiences, I think that it seems seamless, but there's a lot of preparations and a lot of trials and errors in the back. And so we're still in a learning mode, as shared by my two fellow speakers in that regard.
Thank you, Paul. You know, and on that note, just to let the rest of you know, when you watch the, you know, just reflecting on this, when you guys were watching the video from the speakers, what was happening, we're actually on a different platform than you guys. We're actually on Microsoft Teams, the speakers. So we can't see what you guys are seeing now on your conference platform. And when Paul was playing his video, he actually had to be cued when he's going to start speaking. So we're almost behaving like a TV production, like a broadcast station, right? Where you're, you know, on stage, you get cued, but what you're seeing now is like a live broadcast in a way. And in a way, this leads me to some of the later questions that have come up. You know, like someone from Leon asked, how do you build and hire a digital team, particularly for filming? Helena from Charcoal Blue mentioned that digital programming is not simply about capturing, but, you know, whether or not you as audiences, as programmers, as do any of the speakers also feel that more cinematic approach to capturing the translating the stage experience onto screen is that, does it take things away? Does it add something to the experience as well? So maybe just your reflections actually on this whole process of building a team to capture cinematically what's happening, but also the real kind of artistic aesthetic question of, is a cinematic capture versus a more archival capture actually better, not better, advantages, disadvantages? So your own personal reflections, please.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that since we had our recording team in the past, so each concert we did our archival recording, so it's easier for us that we already have those crews, those technicians. They had very close relationship with us. So in the first beginning, it's also that the musicians have to very flexible as well. So when you sing live streaming for the orchestra, if it's just one camera in front of the orchestra, it will be very not so interesting for stay in the screen for more than 1 hour for long pieces. So that's also the musicians have to accept that some camera crews have to sit next to them to focus on particular musicians and follow the musical flows and then see different angles of the music. And then so it's a process also musicians and also staff in the office have to learn. So not only the budget, but it costs a lot than just doing a simple way. But I think it's more and more interesting for the audience, so they will keep following us for different repertoire, might have different angle understanding of this piece. And then so we figure out that sometimes the audience would love to join the live concert, and then they also bought the online concert tickets because they feel the atmosphere, the feeling in the hall. And when they came back home, they would love to see something more detailed and close up understanding of the piece. And then they bought the tickets for live streaming production concerts. So I think it's good to follow the posts opinions. It's always the marketing team. They have to learn. So what's the strategy? What's the possibility in the future? And it's quite it changes all the time. So maybe it works for this case, but won't successful for the next experience. So it's really still that we have to learn a lot from those important experience in the past and what we are doing now.
Can I add one thing to Lydia's? And so since she was talking about live streaming, and so one learning that we actually had was that we actually had more audience for a delayed broadcast than live streaming, because I think online behavior, consumption behavior, is that people want to choose when they can actually enjoy the program, just like Netflix. And so we're debating whether live streaming is actually key to our digital strategy, or because live streaming actually entails a lot more preparations, and there are a lot of uncontrollable elements during the live streaming. And so whether we can actually record the performance and then do a lot more editing. There's just so much more editing, after the fact. And so for music, and particularly even more so for theater and dance. So as you can imagine, so that's something interesting, we're exploring internally, how much more we actually focus on live streaming or delayed broadcast.
Yeah. I want to add more. It's I didn't know it's in Sydney or in Hong Kong, but in Taiwan, live streaming is much more expensive. So it's also for our budget strategy. We also do a delay production recording and also live streaming, and we'll see what's the marketing or promotional strategy of the orchestra.
So the question of live stream versus that which is perhaps more cinematically shot, I think was how the question came through. I think, that is one of the kind of key questions of this form. When is it appropriate simply to put a bunch of cameras in front of the live performance and record or stream that? And when is it appropriate to remove the audience and stage the work for screen? And what is the sort of continuum between those two things that we can work along? On one hand, it's going to be per company, per artist, per work, right? So if it's let's say it's a kind of well-known pop artist, there's going to be a lot of benefit from live streaming their concert, because we'll hear the buzz in the room and the fans screaming and the environment. But also a lot of pop artists in particular during the pandemic made works without an audience that were designed for screen and were beautiful. So it's going to be dependent on the work, I have to say. The disadvantages of the cinematic approach is that you don't necessarily have that immediate sense of shared experience, because you're not necessarily feeling the liveness of the room. But the advantages, of course, are more at an artistic level. You know, that we can create something that is more crafted, that is more beautiful, that is perhaps arguably more true to the form, depending on what the form is. One thing I will say quickly, and we've done this a couple of times now and experimenting with, where even if it is being performed live for an audience, we film it twice. We film it without the audience, so the cameras can get right in close, the cameras can be anywhere in the auditorium, we can be all over the place. And then we'll film it in front of the audience and we'll cut in post-production to create a work that is somewhere in between. Now, we've only done that a couple of times, and I find that really interesting as an alternative to, you know, that sort of purely the live recording or purely the cinematic recording, is actually trying to see if we can, as the phrase goes, have our cake and eat it, do both things. And, you know, it has worked on well on one occasion, less well on another occasion. So that may be something that we'll continue to try.
No, sorry, Paul, please.
Can I just ask one question, one speaker to another speaker? So to Stuart. So I think I alluded to that question earlier. How does a Sydney Opera House, it's very expensive. It's a very expensive undertaking to do live streaming or even a cinematic recording. And how did you guys, or how have you guys made that business case to make it economically viable? And through ticketing, through any other means?
Both. So, you know, there has been an excellent digital program at the house for many years, which has all been 100% subsidized. Okay, so that subsidy has not increased. So the subsidy for the digital program is the same as what it was 3 or 4 years ago. What has increased is there's now a revenue target against the digital program that there never was before. Currently, the revenue target for this year is 10% of that subsidy. Next year, that may be 15, 20%. You know, so we'll expect to be able to say, yes, however much we're spending, we expect to have a return on that subsidy. Now, in terms of how we make the business case, that's not related to any kind of revenue return. That's more related to, and this is where marketing comes into it, it's more related to audience development. It's about reach, it's about brand perception, you know, it's about access, it's about all the things that we would talk about from an audience building exercise in marketing. That's how we actually make the business case. So strangely, it's more of a marketing business case, even though what we're doing is artistic. And so, but that in a very short, truncated answer is how the case has historically been made.
We have the last couple of minutes, and actually just on that note of what Stuart has shared, we all, and also I read in a comment from Benson Hua about whether it's time to reassess the role of the arts in a time of COVID. You know, just to say that we're, I guess, working the arts, you're constantly reassessing anyway, right? Every day you wake up and you go like, why am I still doing this? So, you know, with or without COVID, I think those of us who work in the arts, we are always asking ourselves, why do we do what we do? So I don't think that has changed. But I think hearing from our panelists, what has come up is that, you know, in the last 18 to 24 months, clearly, because we believe in what we do, we have found new ways of getting that work done. And constantly still trying to find new ways. Great tip from Stuart about doing the double recording. And, you know, while we may put up an argument that it's about audience development, we also know that it's about actually reaching more people so that, you know, the mission and the goals of all that we want to do, to bring great music, great art, to make lives better, that continues. And in fact, we have even now more tools to do it. So if I can just not have the last word and give that last word actually to Lydia. Lydia, last word for you, which is to answer Helena's question. Can you just tell us, to end us on a happy mood, what is that diary or mood function on your app about? You know, how is it that, just describe to us this function that makes life better for dementia and carers?
Yeah, I think it's quite interactive. So this app is not only listen to the podcast, listen to the music, and then you can have your own input. So that is like your own diary, but your life is combined with the life with our good music. So it's a kind of different angle for not only one way that we provide the service, we provide the good content. It's also that we are part of their life. So, and it's also very helpful for those carers, because sometimes for dementia people, they the communication is always very difficult. So when two of them both use this app, and then it's a good observation for the doctors, for the carers, and to understanding what's their mood of those patients. So I think it's quite helpful for those hospital, those doctors. So we try to build up the closer relationship between the technology, the music, and also those patients, those dementia people. Yeah.
And on that note, I thank all our panelists. If you're still curious, I know you all have burning questions, download their apps, go onto their streaming website. If you're curious how much a ticket costs, pay for it,
Yes.
and you'll get your answers and contribute to their funding and income model. So try it for yourselves. So thank you, everybody, for this morning's discussion. And thank you so much for our panelists for being so generous with your sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.